Now that we know about for loops, we're going to look at while loops. Now, the name loop tells us that it's going to be repeating things. It's just another control structure, just like our for loops. However, it operates a little bit differently. So let's take a look at the anatomy of a while loop, and we'll see kind of what that happens with that. So the first thing that we have is the while keyword. The while keyword simply tells Python that we're actually going to create a while loop. Okay, the next thing is the condition. The condition is where while loops become a little bit different. So if you remember in for loops, we were counting up or down to things typically. So we count 1 to 10 or 10 to 1, but we know that the end of our loop was when we reached a specific value. Now, while loops, on the other hand, are a little different. Instead of just going to a specific value like 10 or 9 or 5 or 1 or whatever, we actually just continue to evaluate a condition until it becomes false. So as long as that condition is true, we keep doing that over and over and over again. Now, that may sound kind of like a for loop, but the difference is that when we set up conditions, which you will see later on in this lesson, we're typically comparing two things. And that comparison, so long as it's true, will continue to run the loop. But as soon as it becomes false, then it stops. So for example, let's say I want my drone to fly right up to the wall, but not hit the wall, right? Well, if I had a distance sensor, I might fly it until that distance sensor tells me that the value is, let's say, less than 10 centimeters, and then stop, right? I want it to stop where it is. So it's going to keep flying forward, flying forward, flying forward, checking each time how far away it is from the wall until it gets close enough to the wall that we can stop. The thing about that that's very interesting, though, is that when we have that condition set like that, we could start the drone from all the way across the room. We could start it from, 15 centimeters from the wall. So we don't really know how many times the loop is going to repeat before we actually stop the loop. So that's a little bit unique about a while loop is that we have this concept that if we're going to run the loop, we don't necessarily need to know when it stops or when it ends. It will just keep going until that condition becomes false. We always have a colon at the end, and we want to make sure that we remember that. Now, the loop commands, just like we had inside of our for loop, are indented and they have the steps that the loop is going to complete. So long as they're all indented, they'll be considered part of that while loop. And again, the loop commands are just what are the things that the while loop should actually complete or do. So that's kind of the structure of a while loop. Next, we're going to be looking at how to set up different conditions and how we can actually use conditions to make our drone behave smarter.